let's bring back Shweta Khajuria, Managing Director who covers global internet at Wolfe Research. And Shweta, it is unusual, as we've been saying, for Meta to wait this long to report earnings, but we did get first quarter revenue guidance where the midpoint of the range it offers trails the average analyst estimate, and it will no longer offer a full year revenue guidance. What does that tell you? That combined with the fact that the earnings came out a little bit late, what does this all add up to?
Well, I'm not sure what to make of the late earnings release. There could have been a technical glitch for all we know. But in terms of the numbers itself, for Q1 guidance, it came below the street estimates, but investors were expecting something around 40 to 42 billion, so modestly lower than what it actually seems, is my understanding. Expectations were lower than where the street was. And then also for the full year guide, they gave 114 to 119 million. And as I was just saying a few minutes ago, investors were bracing for up to 117 million or so at the high end in terms of the opex guide, even though the street is looking for about 111 million. So maybe modestly worse than what investors were looking for, not meaningfully. And I'm not surprised that the stock is down in the after hours because it has had such a run up over the past few days. Yeah, it's giving back the gains.
And to that point, just reiterating what Romain was saying earlier, Meta expects employee compensation to be the second largest factor when it comes to expenses. So that total expenses coming in higher than anticipated, a lot of that is on talent. We also have another headline here about how Meta says the majority of the 2025 capex will be directed at its core business. Given that we know it's going to spend $60 to $65 billion, what kinds of questions does that raise for you?
Well, number one is where within the core business are they actually spending? Towards what? Is it towards driving engagement? Is it towards Meta AI? Is it towards purely just hiring folks? Where is that spend actually targeted towards? And how are they measuring the ROI? I know that the company is very ROI focused, but what can they tell us that helps us figure out, okay, well, they are making progress, and then that there is ROI and improving ROI on a go-forward basis?
I am curious, too, and we should point out as we're speaking to you, of course, about some of the changes that Meta is making in some of its employee costs. Another headline on Microsoft saying that they plan to add jobs in the infrastructure, Gen AI, and Reality Labs. But it gets to a broader question, and Shweta, and this is really about the amount of money that these companies are spending, and when we really, not so much the return for them, but ever the return for their end users, because ultimately that's going to be the big determinant of how long this continues to go on. And I know there's a difference between some of the enterprise spend and some of the consumer-facing stuff here. But do you see a light at the end of the tunnel here where we are going to see greater adoption of this and, more importantly, people paying money for this?
I do see light at the end of the tunnel, and I think that we may be coming very close just because DeepSeek is an example of them making it work with much lower cost. And so we kind of have an example of that with an open weight model. So I would be very surprised if Meta continues to invest in CapEx at this trajectory, going from 40 billion in 24 to 60 to 65 billion. I highly doubt it's going to be that type of a growth rate in 26 and 27. So we should expect deceleration on that front. And on the user experience side, which was the first part of your question or your comment, we are seeing improvement in terms of time spent. There are only so many billion people on Earth, and they have over 3 billion people on their apps, but the time spent is growing for them, and that implies that engagement is growing, and the product changes that they're making around targeting and making it more engaging around video, for example, they seem to be working for them. So as long as that happens, the implication is that the ROI for advertisers is improving, and pricing of that ad per impression should hold up, and that drives revenue. My final point is that the revenue growth is still in mid-teens for a business this big. And so the question is also, with 70% penetration of digital advertising, can this company at this scale continue to grow in mid-teens? These are big numbers. And we think that they can, because search is another bucket where they could be gaining share from on a go-forward basis.
I just want to make a quick correction here. I said Microsoft had said that they were going to add infrastructure Gen I. I should have said Meta. We've corrected that on the Bloomberg terminal. Meta to add infrastructure Gen I and Reality Labs jobs. I think this is going to be our final question, and it's more about the leadership right now at Meta. Of course, Zuckerberg's been at the helm since the inception of this company. Obviously, he's still relatively young. I am curious as to how confident investors should be in his stewardship, particularly given some of the pivots in recent years to metaverse and now obviously a big push and a big spend in the AI space. Excuse me.
Well, to Mark Zuckerberg's credit, he has taken a lot of steps to earn the credibility as well as respect from investor community, at least from our viewpoint. Whether it is pulling back on opex, it's the year of efficiency. It is shifting the focus from reality, not complete focus, but shifting gears a little bit or a lot to AI from reality labs. All the changes that they have made are arguably have worked really well, and we're seeing that in the stock price being reflected. So I'm not sure if the investment community really wants him to leave the platform, because he's done a phenomenal job. Within Meta, I can see some changes on the leadership front, and we actually did hear from them on Reality Labs, where now Javier Olivan is going to be taking charge at Reality Labs and Dan Reed will be stepping away. So that those types of changes I can see, but I don't see Mark Zuckerberg leaving.